I write mostly horror fiction, short stories. I'm coming out with a novella this year. I've got a couple of novels in progress. Um, I hit a little bit on the sci-fi side sometimes, but it's usually more horror oriented. It started real young. When I was a kid, I watched horror movies all the time, and this was back when they still rented VHS cassettes at supermarkets.
Uh-huh.
And so when my parents would take me shopping, I had no idea what the movies were. I would just pick whatever had the most horrific title or picture on the cover and just bring home these random, terrible 80s, just bad B movies. And I loved them.
What is your favorite of all the movies that you'd watch as a kid? I mean, do you have one?
That's a tough one. Man, I loved Evil Dead. I had a riot watching that. In fact,
that's good stuff. That's H.P. Lovecraft based, isn't it? With the Necronomicon and all that good stuff.
yeah. I love Lovecraft movies, like Dagon, From Beyond, stuff like that. I just love those.
I love H.P. Lovecraft. I've not read much of him, though. I think I like more of the idea behind H.P. Lovecraft than I do actually H.P. Lovecraft. I love talking about the guy. I mean,
yeah, I haven't read a lot of his stuff.
What's that?
Yeah, I haven't read a lot of his stuff, but I love all the H.P. Lovecraft inspired stuff.
Mm-hmm. It's like it's a dawn of a new day when it comes to H.P. Lovecraft stuff, weird tales and all that good stuff. So yeah, Evil Dead is like, I think, in that vein as well. It's a great movie.
Yeah, it kind of is. Yeah. You
get into the TV series? I think it's Starz.
Oh yeah, I love it. Yeah, I think it's a great homage to the original movies. They kept the campiness and just Bruce Campbell's character just really on point. Like I enjoyed it.
He's in it though, right?
What's that?
In it?
Oh yeah, yep, Bruce Campbell.
I have not had the opportunity to check it out. I have 2-year-olds, so it's like I have to pick what I'm able to watch, and then all the other times I'm writing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, have you seen My Name is Bruce?
Is it a documentary?
No, it's actually it's a movie, but Bruce Campbell plays himself, and I love it because he picks on himself in the movie. Like in the movie, he's a bad B movie actor, and he lives in this really crummy trailer, and real monster. So these people who are fans try to get him to fight the monster, talking about that those are just movies. And so they kind of took part of that, like the living in the crummy trailer and everything, and they put it into the TV show, and it just blended really well together, I think, with the original movies.
Yeah, I don't think he's living in a trailer, though.
Together.
I don't think he's living in a trailer necessarily.
No, I don't think so. But it's just the campiness and just picking on himself, as a B movie actor. Like it's great, the sense of humor of it.
I've had the pleasure of listening to a few of his interviews, I think on the Nerdist and other places, and he just seems to have a really great sense of humor. Seems to be coming from a really great place with it all.
Yeah, he seems like he'd be a funny guy to be around.
So you have Evil Dead being one of your favorite films, and now you write horror. Do you like the campiness in that type of horror, or do you try to get more of the macabre, like Edgar Allan Poe, people buried behind walls type horror fiction?
Yeah, the fiction I write doesn't have much campiness to it. I love it in movies. Like my horror movie collection is 90% just B movies, terrible stuff. But my writing is much darker and more serious. I write a lot of creatures, and I think that comes from my love of H.P. Lovecraft. The stories themselves aren't Lovecraftian, but I think the ideas and the creatures are definitely inspired.
What kind of creatures are we talking about?
All kinds. Like I have a way of, I love creating them and thinking them up. Like I have one that's like a worm type of creature. There's another where it's like a black skinned creature with no eyes or facial features. I've written like I don't know if you ever seen the movie In the Mouth of Madness, but
Oh, that's an H.P. Lovecraft movie.
Yes, like just the weird, like sloth giant, like monstrous inhuman things. Like I love that stuff.
So, what do you do with the short fiction after you write it? Are you sending it out, collecting it? 'Cause I know
Orig
you, because I mean you're a publisher too. That's where we know each. That's where I know you from anyway. You published Peace of Mind, and it was a zombie uh, influenced magazine, right? Or
Oh,
easy.
yeah, I work for Sirens Call Publications,
Yeah.
and I do a lot of editing for the online magazine. And usually the every month is like a different theme. So that month was a zombie theme.
Did you get involved with them because of the horror background, or
Yeah,
just
actually, yeah, I got involved with them actually through another website, which one of the editors for Sirens Call runs, called penofthedamned.com.
oh, okay.
And once I started writing for them, I eventually worked my way up to doing some editing. And, I found I was good at it. So I got offered a spot editing for Sirens Call.
You edited my piece a little bit. You picked out some typos. I appreciate what you did. I mean, it was a nice experience. Do you like being an editor compared to being a writer? Can you wear both those hats pretty easily,
Yeah,
or
definitely. I love both sides of it. But I find them both equally enjoyable and gratifying. I started out just writing. I never thought I'd ever be an editor. I'd never considered it.
Mhm.
And once I started doing it, I just fell in love with it.
Oh, really? I don't know if I could do it, honestly. I don't think I have like the frustrated writer syndrome, so I want to rewrite everybody to sound like me. How do you avoid that?
That's that's the tricky part.
Right?
Is trying to get a feel for that writer's specific voice and try to edit the piece without encroaching on their voice.
So, I mean, how many pieces a month do you read of people's stuff and going,
Um,
I mean, you're judging it. You're not just going, I want to be entertained today. Here's a short fiction piece I want to read. You're being drowned by short fiction, I bet, on a monthly
Sometimes, yeah,
basis.
very
Yeah.
often. The online magazine, thank God, is bi-monthly, so it's not.
Oh, every other month. Okay.
What's that?
It's every other month.
Yeah, every other month it publishes. So, and we get a pretty decent amount of submissions. So, that's a lot to do. And then I also edit for Pen of the Damned, so I'm editing a story every week for that. And I also edit novels, so I have that on my plate as well.
That's your side gig, the novels.
Um, no, actually, Sirens Call Publications, they do the online magazine, but they're also a traditional publisher as well.
Oh, I didn't know that. Oh,
Novels,
interesting.
anthologies. Yeah.
So what's your production like with your stories? I mean, are you putting out a lot of work or is this kind of sidelining you from the writing?
No, I do put out a lot of stuff. When I first started writing, it was just writing and submitting to magazines and hoping it got accepted. But I've
Mhm.
become so engrossed in all these other projects that I find that I just always have a deadline and I don't have a whole lot of time to write and just submit to random places anymore. Because for Pen of the Damned, it's a story every however many weeks, and then we do a monthly flash fiction piece. I also write articles for Living Paranormal Magazine every other month. Writing has been mostly posted with Pen of the Damned on that site. And I've been trying to put a lot of work into my novels and get those finished as opposed to less focus on short fiction now.
Oh, really? I love short fiction. I read
Me
a lot
too.
of short fiction. Um, the novels are hard, aren't they? I mean, in terms of kind of
Yeah,
organizing those thoughts, trying to get everything to line up. I just finished my second one, and I'm not even sure what I'm going to do with
nice.
it yet. Now, I mean, it's like you finish a long work like that, and you're like, okay, what's my next long work going to be? It's never ending. You know what I mean?
It is. And for me, I have trouble concentrating on one project at a time all the time. So I've
So
actually
yeah,
got
same here.
uh I have 3 novels in progress right now,
Hmm.
and I just finished my first novella.
Okay.
So it's I just kind of pick away at them, whichever one I'm feeling inspirational for, I'll work on that, and I might put it aside for a while and go to a different one. And So it's a long process of finishing them, but
Yeah.
it seems like they're all going to be kind of finished around the same time. So I'll have some stuff to put out while I write more.
When my wife got pregnant, I got motivated. I'm like, she's gonna finish something, I'm gonna finish something. That's when I finished my first novel. It's like I'm not gonna do anything else but work on this thing. I would work on short fiction, but I wasn't gonna pick up any of my other novels. And I'm the same as you. I have a bunch of projects in the works. And it's hard to say, okay, this is the one I'm going to finish. How are you going to do that when you're actually working on 4 or 5 different books? It's like dedicate yourself to one and just work your way through it, I would imagine. I mean, what are your plans with the novella?
I'm going to self-publish it. It's a very short novella. It just barely qualifies on word count. Kind of, it's more of almost a chapbook, but because it's so short, I'm just going to self-publish it and probably probably gonna try to go the traditional route with the longer full length novels.
How do you feel about self-publishing? Are you obviously you're going to go through Amazon, you're going to do their creative space, doing like a hard copy, but I mean, what's your thoughts on basically the indie scene right now?
I mean, I think it's great that anyone can get their work out there and self promote and a lot of people. But the only the only downside I see to self publishing is there's a lot of stuff that's not so good, and
Yeah.
trying to pick out the good from the bad can
Yeah.
be kind of hard.
As a
Because
publisher, as an editor, you know what the term slush pile means, and
yeah,
that's what I feel is like out there. I mean, when I published my novel, I got buried by 4,000 other novels. I mean, there's no way to rise to the top with an audience. It's just feels very daunting.
yeah, it does. Yeah, because there's so much out there.
Do you find yourself, I mean, obviously your name is very recognizable to me because you're the one that sent back my story and said, fix these errors, and I did. But do you see yourself developing kind of an audience based on your work with authors or getting some
I
kind of
think
name
so.
recognition?
Yeah, yeah. I think being an editor as well as a writer is definitely beneficial to getting more readers for my own work, I'd say, because when I first started writing, and I'd submit to magazines, and I always kind of looked up to the editors, because they're going through the work and putting in their time to publish your work, and putting the effort in to find all the errors and help make your story a better story. And so I would start reading their work or buying a book that they wrote. And so when I started editing, I was hoping, like it would be the same sort of deal. And it's definitely it definitely increased my following, and I definitely think it's a great resource.
It's so interesting because I feel like the exact opposite. Editors are my enemy. They're telling me I'm wrong. You know what I mean? They're going behind they're going through my work and picking out all the things that I got incorrect. And they're giving me rejection letters. I just sent a story out to Clark's World. I'm very proud of it. Science
Oh,
fiction,
they're
whatever.
tough.
Yeah, oh my
They're tough
God,
to
man.
get in. Oh, I've been rejected by them more than once.
I'm like on my 8th story with them right now. And now it's like I finish a short story, I send it right away to them so I can get rejected and then move on to other places.
Yeah.
But I sent the science fiction story in and I was checking their submission list and it said rejected. And I went back to my email and I did not see an email from them saying that I was rejected. My heart was broken. Basically, they decided that they were just going to reject me without an email. And then I actually got the email saying I was rejected. I was like relieved, I
Yeah,
was relieved I was rejected.
it's so much better to get a response than nothing at all. And
Yeah,
it's a lot of the some really big publishers won't even, they say if you don't hear from us in 3 months, it's rejected. So you just kind of, you never hear back. And
that's odd though. I mean, if you look at their
it's
websites, nobody says they're not going. I mean, I don't see anybody usually that says they're not going to respond, but then they don't
it
respond.
it does happen. Yeah, it's happened to me a
Yeah.
few times.
That was one of the reasons
Um,
I didn't send any stuff out before. I mean, I basically said I'm going to start sending more short fiction out this year. And the reason I wasn't doing it earlier is I hated the black hole. I hated dropping a story into it and going, now what? Just felt like I was wasting time. Can you imagine back in the day when you had to put a stamp on an envelope and drop that thing in the mail, spend
oh,
money
I
on it,
know.
invest?
Yeah, I mean, it must have been so much more difficult back then.
Emotionally,
But
right? I mean, you're actually investing into the product, printing it
yeah,
out, stamps, envelopes.
typing on a typewriter, spending money on ink ribbons, like
Exactly. I mean, it turns out to be a regular business then. Now, I mean, it's nothing. Type an email address and away it goes. You get a response back, you don't. I mean, it's a lot easier. I think that's why there's such a slush
it
pile.
is. Yeah, yeah,
That's why there's
because
so many people out there writing.
it's a lot easier to get involved in now. Yeah, and I think there are a lot of positive sides to that as well as a lot of negative sides. Because it's positive because it's good for writers. It helps you get your work out there. There are so many more places to submit and just find as but the other problem is sometimes the market it could be flooded just with too many people almost.
Hmm. I mean, what's your opinion on that in terms of being a horror writer? And do you see that there's a lot of horror writers that you've got to fight for that spot in the magazine?
I found the horror writing community. It I was surprised at how friendly it is. I haven't had a lot of competition or opposition or any really bad experiences. Most people I found are very friendly and supportive, and it's a really good community, I think.
Interesting. I don't really write too much horror. I'd like to. I write macabre, pain and death and stuff like that. But I've been just spending a lot of my time on science fiction. And I feel like science fiction and fantasy, they're very closed off community. You really have to wow them for them to open the doors for you.
Yeah, it's a little different, definitely, I would say.
It all falls under that speculative umbrella, though.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
played around with a little bit of science fiction, you said as well.
Yeah, my novella, it's called Zero Perspective.
Okay.
It started out as a sci-fi story and then it turned into a horror sci-fi. So
That's interesting. A lot of sci-fi can go in that direction. I mean, Aliens, Predator, things like that. I mean, I guess you have the hard sci-fi that goes more into the
that's
tech,
the tough stuff, the hard
right?
sci-fi.
That's what I want to do.
The
I,
readers are the hardest judges of all. Like
right?
you have you better be correct on your facts because
Yeah, I think I tend to sway towards the fantasy elements because I don't go into detail too much. Does your novella, are you in space and that's basically where you are, or do you explain things in detail?
actually almost nothing is explained in the novella,
Okay.
which goes along with the title. It's it's uh it's just like a roller coaster horror ride and things go by and there's no explanation and by the end it's kind of left up to interpretation.
That's
And
interesting. How would you feel as an editor looking at a story that didn't necessarily have a conclusion? My
it all
wife would hate
depends on the story. Yeah, I some people like, a tied up ending, some people don't. It's really a preference. For me it depends on the story. I've read some really amazing stories that ended and I just had no idea. I just left me wondering, but I liked it. And then
yeah,
other
the
some
feeling of what's
stories,
going on. My wife tells
yeah,
me
and
she
then
doesn't want to feel stupid. You know what I mean? She doesn't want to finish a story and go, "Okay, what did I just miss?
that does
Did I
happen.
miss
I
something?"
do miss things sometimes. I read it and I'm like, wait a minute, I have to reread it again. It's what I missed there. Uh, but I do like
How much
ambiguous
room
stories like that.
how much wiggle room do you give an author in that circumstance as an editor, though? I mean, you've got a slush pile, you've got to pick a manuscript out, you've got to get it published, and then you read a book or a manuscript that's ambiguous. You're not really sure. Do you give it a shot? Do you give it another read? I mean, what happens in that circumstance?
I mean, in my position, I'm just the editor, so I don't really call the shots on choosing everything.
Oh no, okay.
Um, I mean, but for me as an editor, as a reader, um, it really depends on how well the story is told. It's kind of a gut feeling, like either it works or it doesn't. Because I've read some stories where the end was, all neatly tied up, and I felt like if that last paragraph wasn't there, it would be so much better. Like just left open-ended.
Oh, really? Do you take it upon yourself to suggest that in the editorial process?
Not usually. The edits for the online magazine we keep pretty light. We don't do a real hard edit on them. So
Mhm.
for the most part, like unless it's something that like I really really feel strongly about, and it's just like a last sentence or something, I might suggest it, depending on the circumstance.
I mean, how hard are you on yourself in the editorial process, in the draft process? I mean, you wrote the story, and then the second draft, obviously, you've got the grammar down, but content-wise, are you a hard ass on yourself, or do you think that I don't know, how does it work? How do you switch hats like that? Go from
It
artist to kind of engineer?
really, I mean, it's really hard to edit your own work, honestly. When I finished Zero Perspective, and I found that the longer I've been an editor, the harder I am on my own work.
Mhm.
But as far as Zero Perspective goes, I wrote 3 drafts, I edited it twice, and then when I sent it to an editor, it came back with all sorts of corrections. So, really, you can't never fully edit your own stuff,
Mhm.
because you need more of an objective eye. Because when you read your own stuff, you're seeing what you imagined rather than, what's written in a way.
Yeah. That's tough, right? In terms of reading and rereading and working and all that good stuff, are you a quick writer? When you wrote your novella, did you how long did it take you from beginning to end?
I would say it probably took, between 1 and 2 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because, like I said, I kind of jump back and forth between projects, so it just kind of slowly built up, and then when it was, finished, towards the end, I'll, like, jump on that project and go hard to finish it once it's right at the end, because 'cause I'm like, "Alright, it's almost done, let me just do it," you know? And, but even though it's such a short book, it took a long time to write because I wasn't fully focused on just the one project.
How do you feel about, Sanderson?
Sanderson?
Yeah, what's his name? God, his first name is escaping me, but he's written he's like my age, he's like in his early 40s, and he's written, like, almost 100 novels already.
Really? No, I've actually never heard of him. I don't think. Not that I recall.
He's a fantasy guy, sci-fi fantasy. I'm gonna look him up right now. I wonder if I said his first name, whether you would whether you'd get it or not. But I mean, there are guys out there that write multiple novels every year. It's like, how
Yeah.
are you doing this?
That I've wondered that myself. I don't know how these guys do it. I mean, phew, I it's
Brandon
my
Sanderson.
full length novel I've been working on for about 5 years, and
Uh-huh.
it's just about done. But I mean, I guess if you were writing multiple novels a year, like that's all you'd be doing. You probably wouldn't be writing much short fiction or anything else. Like you'd
Yeah, a
really
lot
have
of
to
these
just
guys that I talk to are not short fiction authors at all. They're primarily geared to that long form, throwing out hundreds of thousands of word typewriters. And then I wonder how your craft develops. I mean, how are you developing craft if all you're doing is writing long form fiction? I mean, I would think you'd want to invest some time in the shorter stuff.
that worked for me because when I first decided to start getting serious about writing, I wrote a draft for a novel and it was terrible. It'll never see the light of day. and and then I thought about it and I was like, maybe I should try some short stories first, and kind of feel it out, see how it goes, try to find a style. And I think short fiction is a great way to start. If you want to write, definitely start with short fiction and it'll help you build a voice and kind of figure out what you like to write, what you don't.
And you just decided one day that you wanted to be a writer. You
Yeah,
weren't
I mean,
writing as a child or going through
no,
journal
I
after
wasn't.
journal.
No, I wasn't. I read a lot, but I never considered writing until about high school.
Uh-huh.
And I wrote a little bit, but then I kind of fell out of it and did other things. And it wasn't until about 2008 that I really, really, wanted to really start writing and start taking it seriously. And so I wrote a few short stories, and I didn't really do anything with them. I didn't even have a computer at the time. I was writing all this stuff with notebooks and pens.
It's
And
amazing how different life is with a computer, right?
yeah, yeah. And then once I was like, I got to get a computer and start, typing these out and do something with them. And so I did. My first story was published in 2012, and from then on, once I got that first acceptance, that was like the greatest feeling ever.
Uh-huh.
And I just wanted to keep recreating that over and over again. So I just dove right in and just started writing all the time.
Oh, how many stories have you had published so far?
Um, I haven't counted recently, but altogether, probably between like flash fiction, short stories, I think I'm getting close to 50 now,
Wow.
something
What's
around
your
that.
key to success? I mean, what would you recommend towards somebody who's still looking to publish lots of short stuff?
Um, yeah, it's hard to say. I mean, I guess it depends on the person and the opportunities. What I've done for myself is I'll never turn down any opportunities, and I think that's how I've become so overwhelmed and doing so many different projects all at once. Is if I see an opportunity, I take it. Whether I feel like I have time or not, and I've built up a good writing circle of friends and tried to build up my social network and um,
It's all the internet, huh?
just
Facebook
yeah,
and Twitter and all that good stuff that's helped you develop kind of a community.
yeah, definitely. Definitely getting started. Like you want to get involved in the community, and it's uh, it's. I mean, everybody's path is different. I think when it comes to being a writer, you know, uh, everybody goes in a different direction. I think it's a very personal experience.
Personal on a public platform, basically.
Yeah, yeah,
I mean, you're putting yourself out there.
yeah,
I mean, it might
definitely.
just be words, but I mean, you still have to have a public face, right? I mean, you're Lee Forman attached to that story, and people are going to want to know who you are. Do you have a
Yeah.
website?
Yep. I have a website, and with a blog on it, and leeformanauthor.com.
Do you what do you do with your blog? Is it just writing tutorials? Or are you talking about public or not public, but current events, things of that nature? What are you filling your blog with?
It varies. So most of my posts are about I'll do like horror movie reviews or TV show reviews, or sometimes I'll just talk about writing in general. I've been trying to my blog because I've been having trouble finding like specific that I want to post about all the time.
Hmm.
So it's more of a whim idea for a blog post. I'll write it out.
It's interesting. So you don't have like a schedule with the blog post or anything of that nature.
Not right now, but I've been trying to create one. I've been trying to do at least 2 blog posts a month to try to be more consistent with it.
A month. I I was reading I was looking to see if Amazon is a good place to put short fiction. Just publishing just singular pieces of fiction to see if they would sell. And I happened upon this one guy who says he's basically retired off the efforts that he puts into his blog. So, I mean, I'm thinking about it, and then I realize I'm reading his efforts that he puts into his blog. It's just basically writing posts about writing. It's meta writing, it's meta stuff. You know what I mean? And I guess he does a lot of it.
Yeah, I think that gets a good response, writing posts about writing, because writers who are just starting out and are looking for guidance and information, a lot of people go to that.
Yeah.
That's what I did when I first started. I read a lot of writing blogs. And I haven't started any of those because I feel like I don't know, who am I? What do I know about writing to give advice? Maybe
Well,
someday I'll do that, but
no, I totally understand. I mean, my website's filled with my podcasts that I put on the feed and flash fiction. I don't think that would go anywhere. Just random stuff like that. I don't write about anything particular. Now, the idea of doing television shows or movie reviews is compelling, though. I wonder
yeah,
if
I
that would
found
actually traction.
I Yeah, those posts have actually gotten the most hits on my website. Is all the horror movie articles.
That's interesting. What do you think of the state of horror film today?
I think it's getting better. Getting better.
What does
Uh,
that mean compared to what when you were a kid, like loving on the B movies that really were horrible looking back on them, but you still have like this, feeling of love for, Michael Myers or something along those lines, or
well,
Piranha.
I think it's going back more towards like a reemergence of the 80s because there's all these great independent films that are coming out, and
Oh, that's
you
true.
could consider them B movies, but they're really well done.
Cabin in the
And
Woods.
I like that one. That was a good one.
That was amazing. I'm not
That
really a
was good.
horror film buff, but I watched that one because I heard it was so good and it sucked me in and it was scary. And then all of a sudden the end happened and it was like, what am I watching?
I
It was,
was not expecting that. That got me.
it was a good movie. Anything this year that sticks out that you highly recommend?
What have I seen this year? What's come out recently? I almost never see a horror movie in the theater. I'll tell you that because I mostly go for the independent stuff.
In theater? Or you mean horror films in general?
Yeah, like I'll wait for direct to DVD or online streaming or something like that. Because the last 3 times that I've seen a horror movie in the theater was disappointing.
Oh, really?
I
That's
was,
big, right? I mean, it
yeah,
kind of,
and it was a long time ago, and I feel like the late 90s, early to mid 2000s horror movies, there weren't too many good ones during those times. But since then, they've been getting back up there. What's one? I enjoyed Creep. That was what, a couple years ago, I think that came out. That was pretty good. Um,
I didn't see it.
I think some of the remakes have been okay. The Evil Dead remake was pretty decent. I still prefer the original, but I think for a remake, it was well done.
What was it that was remade? You kind of caught up on me a little bit.
Oh, Evil Dead,
Oh, Evil Dead, the remake. I did not see it.
very gory. It's
Oh, is it?
very, very gory. Yeah, well, see the original Evil Dead, all those like multicolored green and yellow, nasty looking stuff. Originally, they had planned on it being more gory, but because of the rating systems, they wouldn't have even qualified for a R rating. It would have been NC-17. So they actually use green, pus, and all this other colors instead to qualify for the R rating. So the new Evil Dead, I think what their intention was to just make it gory as possible. Kind of a homage to what they tried to do before.
It's amazing how we're less sensitive nowadays than before.
I'd
Even
say,
Kill
yeah,
Bill
definitely.
was done in black and white just to avoid the blood getting them a what is it, NC double or NC-17 rating or something along those lines.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, the ratings
Independent. Go ahead.
and the independent films can really go far because they don't have to worry about theaters.
Yeah, exactly. Right. They're not worried about the studio breathing down their neck looking for their refund back or their investment back.
Yeah. Oh, you know what movie that's recent? You asked me what recent movie, and now I remember. The Void.
The
That one
Void.
was amazing. Yeah.
It sounds like it should be
That's
science fiction.
it. Yeah, it's very Lovecraftian. It's a very Lovecraftian film.
All right. So you've just written a novella. It's in the horror genre, science fiction. You're going to self-publish on Amazon. And you're an editor on 2 magazines or 2 websites. What do you
Um,
call them? Are they e-zines or are they magazines or are they just websites?
well, the Pen of the Damned is just a website, and the magazine it would be called an e-zine because there's no physical paperback copy,
Okay.
so it's
And
like
that's where
online
my piece is
only.
published. The zombie one. What's it called? I'm really my brain's dead.
Me too.
I mean, if this is going to be the rest of my life, I am not looking forward to being 80 if I make it that far. I'm going to be completely mindless.
Oh yeah,
Um,
me too. I don't even know who I am.
right. Do you, Terry Pratchett just lost keys on his keyboard when his dementia started. Just could not find the S key or something along those lines, and he actually attacked his assistant, going, "What did you do with my S key?" Imagine how scary that would be to have like
Wow.
things that you know should be there and they're just not. I mean, the assistant walked in and said, "Your S key's right here." Guy died of Alzheimer's. I mean, what a horrible way to go.
That
I'm not even
is,
sure.
yeah,
Yeah, lesions in the brain or something, and just died of infection. I'm not even sure. Um, I mean, yeah, as far as horror goes, Life is a big horror show, isn't it?
absolutely. I get a lot of my stuff, a lot of my inspiration is from real life, that's for sure.
So what are your plans with going forward in terms of all the gigs that you have and writing and making it a career?
Um, you know, I I'm just kind of going with the flow, seeing where it takes me. Take whatever opportunities I can, but my main focus is I definitely want to focus on novels and be a novelist. I definitely want to continue pursuing my career as an editor. Sell
What
books
is
is not easy.
preventing you from actually finishing the novels?
Just time, really. Them and just my time is divided between I don't know 5 or 6 projects at a time, all the time. So it's just uh, really just like trying to organize everything properly to put
Do
enough
you
time into it.
do you have a day job also, or is it just with the editing?
Yep, just writing and editing. Yep, that's pretty much all I'm doing.
It's a good way to live your life, right?
Yeah, I love it. It's great, working from home. I mean, I've had to make some sacrifices because it doesn't pay as much as some other jobs, but uh, I dove right in and I said, I'm gonna make this work. If I fail, I fail.
Well, I mean, it doesn't look like you're failing. It looks like you're kind of succeeding, huh?
I think so. I hope so. I'm getting there.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm
I mean,
starting to get there.
yeah, that's amazing. I mean, what is your when you look in the mirror and you say I'm successful, what does that look like for you?
Just I guess publishing novels because that's the one thing I really haven't done yet. I think once I have published a few novels, then I'll be like, okay, I've did what I needed to do. I can die happy.
Would you go independent with them too?
I'm probably going to try to go traditional publishing for the full length ones. I'm going to at least
What does
take a
that look
shot
like?
at it.
Are you going to go agent or straight to publishers?
I haven't thought about that yet too much. I've considered it in the back of my mind, but uh, I might try an agent first because it makes the whole going through a publisher process easier. But trying to find an agent is just as hard. So
Well, you actually work for a publisher though, too. So would it be easier to go through your publisher with an agent or directly with a manuscript?
Uh, well, for the one I work for, it'd probably be easier to go directly, but I kind of feel like not that it's cheating because my novel would get the same scrutiny as anyone else's,
Hmm.
but
They don't
I don't
want
know.
to
I
give you an
just
employee discount, right?
yeah, like but I feel like I want to take the chance and I don't know, just not that it is cheating. It would feel like, oh, my novel's published, but I work for them, so some people, I don't know how people would see it, but
I mean, I guess that's the nature of the independent literary scene right now, anyways, cutting out the chaff, getting rid of the extra parts that aren't really necessarily needed. And when I look at an editor, not an editor, when I look at an agent, I'm like, why are you there again? To introduce me? Why can't I email these people directly? You know what I mean? I'm not really quite sure why agents are existing still to this day.
yeah, it's more like agents uh really what they I think their job is, as far as I know, is they know which publishers are looking for what, so they can kind of figure out where the best place to put your book is.
Hmm.
And I think also um a lot of publishers will are if you submit a book directly to a publisher, it's going to sit there. And if a submission from an agent would probably be read before a submission directly.
It's interesting. I mean, this is an archaic system, though. I
In a
mean,
way, it kind of is with the self-publishing, but I feel like unless you have like already have a big following or you get lucky, uh, publishing really helps you out because they have all the marketing tools and the advertising and a market to uh, sell the book to. And when you're independent, I mean, it's your word alone. You don't have a publisher backing the fact that your book is good and doesn't suck. Like,
yeah.
because I mean, as an independent author, you could literally write whatever you want and just publish it. You could write, the same sentence 100 times and just publish it
There is
if
a
you really wanted to.
well, I would rather not, but there was a guy back when during the election wrote a romance between Donald Trump and a bellboy. Drunk one night, he just wrote a story, published it on Amazon, and he woke up the next morning and he was a millionaire. And he made that much money based on just a ridiculous idea that he had drunk one night. So
Wow.
it's really interesting what could happen in the independent literary scene.
It
I mean,
is.
Hugh
Yeah.
Howey make like $10,000 a week or something along those lines for wool. It's his. He owns it. Now, traditional publisher came knocking and grabbed the print copy of that book or whatever. But I mean, you said following, right? So I mean, that's that magical word. How do you actually get a following to look
That's
at
the
you?
that's the hard part because
Yeah,
there's
the
so much
impossible.
out there.
Yeah, I mean, I look at Andy Weir. Are you familiar with him? The guy who wrote
No.
The Martian, and he just published Artemis, which is an
Oh yeah.
interesting take
Okay.
on the moon.
I haven't read any of his stuff, but yeah.
He's a hero of mine. I mean, what he did, I don't know. I'm guessing. I've never had a conversation with him, but he wrote a short story called The Egg. Have you read that?
No.
I'd highly recommend it. Um, I'll send you a link to it now. I always send the link because it's really just a great story. He wrote The Egg, which is basically kind of like a death fantasy. It's really short, like 800 words. In fact, if you go to my YouTube channel, I had one of my guests read it one time. It took less than 10 minutes. And from that, it's been published into like 25 different languages, probably more. And he developed the following. People loved him, went to his website and helped him write The Martian, basically. And now, he's publishing books that are getting optioned off to movies like immediately. He's written 2 novels, both of them are successful. I mean, the guy's living the dream. And I think it's
Yeah.
only to do with this short story that he wrote. And
Yeah, that's the luck factor, I think. I mean, your writing could be great and just get passed by just out of chance, I think. But
I mean, yeah, what is it called? Lightning in a bottle, right? I mean, you're not really quite sure what you can do to be in the right place at the right time.
yeah,
So you
yeah,
have to be every place all the
yeah,
time,
exactly.
right? I mean, work your butt off. I mean, you can't. I mean, I talked to a guy. His name was Jarrett Robinson, and he's one of those. If you're only writing 1 novel a year, then you're never going to succeed because I'm writing 5 novels a year, type dude. And like, dude, how are you doing that? How are you putting that much effort into these novels? And are they any good?
That's the question. Yeah, how?
Right?
Yeah, I mean, I know there are some authors that write, a few novels, 4, 5, 6 novels a year, and it's not that they're bad, but they're not as deep maybe as something that took somebody years to create.
Right?
Like
Um,
great story, great pacing. It's a good, enjoyable read, but maybe it doesn't have that deeper intellectual thought process going on behind it.
I
That's what
mean,
I would assume.
like I said, I finished a novel just recently, and the story that I started out with is not what I ended up with completely. It took me a a good stretch of time to actually finish the novel. And what I started with and what I ended with, 2 totally different things. I actually pulled 2 different novels out of that novel to get my story as lean as humanly possible. And I don't even know if I've ever read an independent author. Have you? Like, picked up an independent novel and said, "I'm really looking forward to reading this. Can't wait. Heard about this being one of the best books of whatever year we're in."
Yeah, I mean, I've picked up quite a few independent novels, but they're mostly authors through my circle that I know personally, like through social media and stuff like that.
Hmm.
I haven't really read any just random ones though.
I've never been recommended one either. I've never been told this guy is the best writer ever, or you need to check out so and so. And I'm not sure who is. Who's buying independent novels?
Yeah, that's a tough. Yeah, it's a good question.
It's a very confusing industry. I mean, you talk to them, it seems like they're doing okay. It seems like they're successful on some level, but I couldn't tell you exactly how. I mean, I know
Yeah.
who Andy Weir is, and he was an independent, right? And now he's traditional. I know who Hugh Howey is. He was an independent, and now he's traditional, but maybe that's where they come from. They kind of trickle up through the slime of the slush pile, and then I'm aware of them or something along those lines. But that work,
Yeah,
they're
there's
just not
probably
the
a point, like there's probably some line you cross at some point where, okay, now you're starting to, build up speed and pick up momentum. And I think once you pick up that momentum and a lot of people start reading it, it just like a chain effect happens, and it just, your stuff just gets out there
Yeah,
or whatever.
I mean, it's really, I mean, we were talking about agents, and agents won't look at you unless you have a following or something that they can sell. And everybody has a great book. I mean, I guess. And at the end of the day, I mean, you being an editor, you know that books can be better with help. An editor can come in and say, you know what, we need to rearrange this, or we need to edit this, or we can delete this character completely, and it's a totally more concise and tight story. I mean, most people who get traditionally published aren't even necessarily writing the story that gets published at the end of the day, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, I'm not sure how far in big, traditional publishing. And I guess it would depend on the author too. I mean, if you take like somebody just starting out, their first couple of books, they might go harder on King. They probably just let him write whatever he wants. Honestly, he's gonna sell it anyway. So
I mean, and yeah, it's interesting, right? I mean, if you're a writer, if you're an artist, especially in this field, you have to be aware critique is the best way to tell the best story possible, right? I mean, you have writing friends, you have writing groups, you submit a story to them, you're expecting, how can I make this the best story ever? You get blind to it sometimes. But
yeah,
Stephen King can't
critique
add the
is the
story to save
best
his
thing.
life. What's that?
Critiquing is the best. It's such a helpful tool. I used to go to a lot of local like writing groups,
Hmm.
critique groups where you go and you bring your stories and everybody comments and gives their opinion, and that I learned a lot from that. A lot.
Wow, I live in New York City, and I don't even know of any place like that.
Yeah, I found them on like meetup.com.
Hmm.
There's some local writing circles. They don't tend to last very long though. They go for a little while and then they kind of break up. I've been through a few of them. Um, but that's a great tool. And actually, and editors too. Like when I submit a story and the editor, I submitted one story. This is one of the first of that I ever had published. I sent this story in, and the editor completely tore it to pieces, like almost like yelling at me, but like, but I didn't take offense to it because I looked at her opinions and I was like, wow, that's a really great idea.
Right.
And I sat there and I reworked the story, and the end product was so much better. And that's when I started to like kind of look up to the editors and admire them more, because yes, she tore my story to pieces and that could have hurt, and a lot of writers probably would have been hurt by it, but I took it more as like, thank you. Like,
Yeah.
this
I
is a
mean,
much better story now.
she took the time to do that. I mean, that's amazing. It's kind of a miracle,
Exactly.
honestly.
Yeah,
I had to
like with
offer her
how
to,
many stories she had to go through, she took the time to really look at mine like that, and
yeah.
I appreciated it.
As many sources I've submitted to Clark's World, I get the exact same form letter back. Like, doesn't give you anything. And then I had a guy tell me,
Yeah.
I really like the story, but add these flourishes to it, and I might reconsider. the rejection or whatever. And it's like, I prefer that. I prefer you to tell me that something sucks as opposed to not saying anything at all. What can I do to improve these stories to get an audience behind the work that I'm doing? That to me is the most beneficial thing, the sending stuff out. That's amazing. Yeah. And it doesn't happen
Definitely.
very often. They either say
Yeah.
yes or nothing at all normally. Or
Yeah. Well, depending on the size of the magazine, you figure, I mean, they probably get hundreds of submissions, so they probably just don't have the time
yeah,
to personalize, all the replies. At some point, if they gain a big enough readership and so many authors are submitting stories, it just becomes, they're sending out, I don't know how many hundred emails every month. Like at that point, it comes copy paste form letter.
yeah. I mean, you get turned off from the first sentence, you're not going to read on, or you find yourself zoning out in the first page. I mean, there's no point.
Yeah, a lot
Writers
of
of
stories get
Tomorrow,
rejected that way. Yeah.
yeah, they're not giving it a chance because they have so many other stories.
Hmm.
I mean, you might be
That's
hitting
why
them
they
after
say,
lunch.
yeah,
None
that's
of
why
it are
they say
actually.
your first line is so important, because if that first line doesn't grab the reader, you might just get rejected.
Or it might all be luck. And they might have picked up your story right when they got in that day, and they hadn't had their first cup of coffee or something along those lines. I mean, your first line might be great to somebody else. The whole thing is really interesting on your end of the ball, but I don't know if I could do it. I don't know if I could read all those stories and have to slog my way through judging them and deciding whether I want to fill a book with them. Have you ever thought about starting your own publication, like
I mean,
doing
it's
what you?
crossed. Yeah, it's lightly crossed my mind, but like at this point, there's no way I'd have time. And I feel
Mhm.
like it would, I feel like my novel writing would probably end up coming to a halt at that point. So I wouldn't want to ditch that. So,
How much time a day do you put into the novels themselves? I mean, you an every day on the novel type guy, or are you every once
uh,
in a while, or
n-
what's your
it
work ethic?
varies. It varies. My work ethic is pretty sporadic, to be honest. I've been trying to work out a system, and my system is just do whatever. It's sometimes I'll work on the novels every day for a few weeks, and then sometimes I won't work on them at all for a few weeks. Sometimes I'll write a few sentences, sometimes I'll write 3,000 words. It just kind of goes by whatever I'm feeling that day, pretty much.
And the short fiction's the same way. You just write whatever comes to you when it comes to you. You're not trying to force it or anything like that.
The short fiction usually has a deadline, so I have to force those.
Oh, you're being invited to publish?
Most of the time, yeah.
Oh,
Uh,
interesting.
I'm either invited, and the Pen of the Damned is like it's generally like a group of 10 writers, and we post like on a weekly rotation schedule. So like I have to have a story ready every 10 weeks for that. And we also do a monthly photo flash prompt where the whole group writes their own short piece based on a photo. So I'm always working on those, as usually they're on kind of a short deadline. And then doing nonfiction articles, I for the Living Paranormal Magazine, I find those to be the hardest thing to write.
Yeah, I wouldn't imagine it'd be enjoyable either.
Those those are the times where I'm like, oh, like just stress.
Yeah. I mean, I do a speculative fiction podcast too called Mirage, but that's just me, talking to somebody about an author that we're both interested in, just geeking out on it, and that's about as close as I get to nonfiction. I got
Nonfiction
invited
is
to
tough.
what's that? Yeah, I got invited to guest post on somebody's blog, and I said, "Can I just submit a story?" I just,
Yeah.
I just don't care enough to write, the informational stuff. How to write or whatever just doesn't seem beneficial.
Yeah, it's tough. I find fiction a lot easier.
What's the nonfiction stuff about?
It's paranormal stuff. I read a lot of UFO
Um,
articles, cryptids and urban legends. Like I did an
that's
article
some
about,
fun stuff right there.
yeah, like I did an article about the Mothman and the Point Pleasant
Yeah,
incident.
used to live right down the river from Point Pleasant and Huntington.
Oh, wow.
I've been to that bridge. I've been over the Ohio River to Ohio and then back over to Point Pleasant.
Did you ever see the statue? They have like a Mothman statue down there.
No, I don't know if I saw it or not. I don't remember seeing it, but I've only been there like once or twice, specifically to sell books for Vanity Press, and then maybe I was up there for another reason, like my nephew's football game or something. So no, I don't remember seeing the Mothman thing, but it's an interesting story, right? I mean, what's the deal with the Mothman? He appeared and then the bridge collapsed. Is that the
Yeah,
gist?
that's the gist. Like he started appearing and local residents were reporting sightings of him. And what was it? I can't remember the exact amount of time, but I think it was only like a month or two later, the bridge collapsed and then the sighting stopped. So people tended to connect, the Mothman sightings with the bridge collapse. And ever since then, it's been kind of related to, if you see the Mothman, it's like a foreboding of something bad's going to happen.
Where have they seen the Mothman other than Point Pleasant?
That's the most really notable reference. There's not too much else out there on Mothman sightings aside from the Point Pleasant collapse. I think there was one other, but I can't quite remember what it was.
I want to, yeah, I was gonna say, I think I remember there being another one too, but I can't remember because I don't think it was isolated. That was a good movie though, Richard Gere, The Mothman
Yeah,
Prophecies.
yeah, yeah. I enjoyed the movie.
But I read recently, and this is not really, I guess that is kind of a dig, but since iodine was added to food, the IQ in our country has increased exponentially.
Really,
Yeah.
I've never heard about that.
Yeah, it's just a little dig at 1966 humans in West Virginia not being the brightest. And oh, here's that statue. No, I don't remember ever seeing it. It's an interesting place, West Virginia. It really is. Those people are incredibly interesting. They could be really mean or they could be really nice. And they all have opinions and they stick to them too. Have you ever been to Appalachia?
No,
It's fun.
I've never even left New England.
Do you consider New York New England?
Isn't it part of New England? I think
No, I don't think so. I think it's
no. Oh,
I think it's
okay.
the other one. I think it starts at like Connecticut. They won't include New York. They said, we belong
Oh,
someplace
okay.
else. Mothman. Yeah, I wouldn't have thought of those as nonfiction stories, but I guess they are. People do consider UFO abductions and the
It's kind of
paranormal nonfiction.
it's kind of towing the line a little bit because it's you know, some people believe it, some people don't. It's not fiction because it's not a creative story. It's more based on, reported or alleged events. So, but
Have
I
you
like that
noticed,
because
like, is there new stuff popping up?
um I mean, I haven't seen too much except for that. Did you see that video of that comet thing over San Francisco or California or somewhere,
Yeah,
wherever it
Los
was?
Angeles. I think
Yeah,
it ended
okay.
up being a Musk rocket, Elon Musk. I think he had a launch
Oh, okay.
right then, and that was what it looked like going through the clouds or something along those lines. Oh, another one that's really interesting that came out recently were the Navy pilot videos where they were seeing something unidentified and commenting on it.
Oh, I didn't see that.
Yeah, I wrote a story. I was motivated to write a story about that. Yeah, it was real interesting. They had released a bunch of top secret videos, and they're horrible. I mean, they're just about as bad as any UFO video you've ever seen in your life, except these are grainy and in black and what do they call it? Night vision goggle, night vision, that grainy green color.
Yeah.
Something you're not getting anything out of it. You're not saying, "Oh my God, that's an alien waving at that pilot." No, it's a little blink of white in the middle of a hazy green coloring. I don't know.
Yeah, the
I
videos
want
are
there to
always
be
bad.
something. Yeah, I mean, I want there to be something, near-death experiences or some kind of other than normality. You know what I mean? Looking at the moon and just knowing that it's a rock floating around our planet. Something magical out there in the world.
Definitely. Definitely.
So where are we at in terms of your stuff? I mean, we've talked about an hour at this point. We've rambled all over the place. That's typically how things work on my show. Just kind of talk until time runs out. Did you want to mention anything else?
Let's see. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I guess that pretty much covers it, right? Um,
Did you make a list?
yeah, I did.
Anything? What's on your list?
Let me see. You know, where I get inspiration. That's actually, yeah, I could talk a little bit about that if you want to put a few more minutes in.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah, actually, the full length novel I'm working on, it's like a post-apocalyptic novel, and the entire novel was a dream that I had, like a really in-depth, detailed dream. And I woke up and just started writing the whole idea out so I wouldn't forget it. But the funny thing about that is the novel, as it is now, was when I first wrote it, completely different. There's almost nothing the same about it except for the characters.
Yeah, my experience too. It's crazy, huh?
Yeah. And then I get inspiration from music too. Like if I'm writing something really dark and I'm really trying to get that horror vibe on, I'll put on this like dark. I don't know what what would really classify the music. It's like dark modern opera. Like it's like the theme song from the beginning of The Shining, but like an hour long, and it's really terrifying music.
Interesting. And that helps you with the horror or the science fiction or all the
With the
above?
horror, yeah, with the horror, yeah. Like if I'm trying to get a certain theme going, like I'll go right to that music and kind of get into that headspace.
Yeah, I'm into music too in terms of writing, and it has to be. I've discovered YouTube has these concentration videos. They're like 8 hours long. I think you're supposed to listen to them when you're sleeping or something like that. And they're not good. I mean, they're not like great music or whatever, but they allow me to just concentrate on whatever I'm doing. I can actually put like a timer on and go, okay, an hour on this story, and I don't get up or go to Twitter or go to Facebook or Reddit or anything. I'm like stuck on the task.
That's actually a really good method. I've done that before. There's a song by a band called Wax Fang called The Astronaut, and the song is 45 minutes long.
Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes if I really want to work on a project, I'll put that on and I say, all right, I'm not going to stop until the song's over.
Yeah. I put my alarm on my phone and go, okay, don't do anything except look at the story and finish it. I wrote a 1,000-word piece today in an hour by doing that. It's like, okay, I have to write this. Concentrate. And then I went to movies.
So easy to get distracted.
Oh my God.
So easy.
I mean, your playground's your workplace too. I mean, everything you want's right there on your computer. You want to play a video game, it's right there. You want to go on Twitter, it's right there. Back in the day, I mean, you had to actually get up and find something like a book or turn on the TV to be distracted. Now you can do whatever you want right in front of the computer. What else inspires you? Dreams, music, obviously movies.
Yep, dreams, music. Yeah, yeah, I get a lot from movies, real life experiences, and just random thought, like stupid things sometimes. Like I'm trying to think of something specific, but like the dumbest little thing you wouldn't think would inspire a story. You know, you get something great out of it. You know, like I'll be like in a store and see a guy wearing a weird hat, and all of a sudden I agree, you know. And I find those to be some of the more interesting things because it's this whole idea based off of almost nothing.
I would think that for somebody who is very educated in the paranormal, being inspired by things that you see every day would be very easy. You know what I mean? I mean, you're going to see somebody who's, 6 foot tall and bald and skinny, and you're going to think, oh, a gray man or whatnot. Or not a gray man.
Yeah.
What are they called? It's not the gray man. It's the other one.
Reptilian.
No, the reptilians. I had a buddy in Olympia, Washington that really believed there were reptilians out there. I used to make fun of him all the time. But the idea that the idea that there are V-like people out there who are dressed as humans but are actually lizards, it's incredibly spooky. Or that if there's
That
something underneath the Denver airport. I mean, I just love stuff like that so much.
Yeah, me too. It would be terrifying. I mean, if it were true, I mean, it would just change your whole perception of reality in general. Like, I can't imagine
Like if we
what
were
that would do.
slaves,
Yeah, and
we
didn't even know it.
didn't even know it. Like our every waking moment is being controlled by these lizard people that are living beneath us, and we work towards some kind of goal they've set us on. I mean, the world has changed so much in the last 100 years.
Yeah,
It's not what we used to be.
unbelievable.
We aren't, as a species, we're not even what we used to be.
Yeah, yeah,
Go back in time and meet like a soldier from the Civil War or something. They're like 5'4", emaciated. You know, their teeth are falling out. They could probably not. Most of them probably couldn't even read. We're like building things with our hands that they couldn't even comprehend.
yeah, yeah. It's a different world, and it's rapidly changing even faster with all the stuff that's coming out, new technologies, and it's science fiction is definitely becoming real.
Yeah, that's what inspires me. What's tomorrow? What's the definition of humanity to come? Who are we going to be tomorrow? I mean, this fact that we're so connected. You know, I could reach out to you and like an hour later you can get back with me and then we could talk for free for an hour or so and then record that conversation and put it back on the internet so other people can enjoy it too.
Yeah, it's
It's
a great thing.
it's miraculous. It's
It
miraculous.
is. In fact, my one of my dreams in life is to have my consciousness transferred into a robotic body.
Was
Like,
listening
that's
to
what
a
I want.
guy just recently who discussed that exact topic. In fact, that shows up in my last novel too. But let me ask you this: is it you or is it a copy of you?
Question. That's a good
Right?
question.
I mean, the interesting part about it is if you're existing here and you have a copy of your consciousness put into a computer, but you're still here and your consciousness is in the computer, you wouldn't know you are having different thoughts than you. You're still you. Even if you die and your consciousness gets transferred, I mean, you're still dead, right? Your consciousness gets to continue some form of life, but you know, the person that's inside your body with your synapses no longer exists. And
Yeah,
whatever that means.
that's actually a scary thought, but I would do it. I would do it anyway. I'd take
Just
the
to see.
risk. I'd say, you know what? Just to see, yeah.
I mean, if
Like
there's some
Star
kind of
Trek
mirroring,
when
right? I mean,
they
you just have like the ideas that the
yeah,
you on the computer is having and the you that, I mean, if they merge, that would be really cool. To have a
yeah.
telepathic like connections or something. But it's kind of like a twin. Like a twin's a copy of itself, and they don't really have the same thought processes. This twin's different than this twin, even though they came from the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
I did it twice in my novel.
That's
I killed two
interesting.
people and have their consciousness kind of uploaded into a computer. I mean, I know it's not a unique story, but the idea of
It's definitely relevant because I think that I heard, I don't know how true it is. I saw it on my Facebook feed that there's a Russian company researching that actually.
oh yeah, there's a guy who is the chief something at Google who's trying to replicate his father.
Wow.
He's basically surrounded this artificial intelligent type programming with all of his father's belongings and fed letters into it, and he's trying to get it to replicate his father's thoughts. I don't think he's succeeding very
Wow. That
well.
would be interesting to see how that goes.
Other people have tried that too. I mean, this is like the idea of death is very interesting because that's what we've basically since the beginning of humanity have come to kind of want a definition for religions and whatnot. What happens when the body ceases? And that's what we're kind of talking about too, because we want some kind of backup programming that makes you continue on into the future.
Yeah, that's the whole idea of I want to be a robot. This way I can just keep going and keep writing.
Well, then you have to worry about rust.
Yeah,
corruption,
replacement
and
parts.
or the worst one would be like a computer virus. You're a
Oh yeah,
robot.
get my own
You're
brain hacked.
get hacked. Then you're a
Yeah,
slave to somebody. You can't do anything about it. You have all the computational power that you have, but you can't do anything with it because you've been pushed into the corner while this like malware kind of uses your body for horrible things like murder and bank robbery and stuff like that. You have to watch it and witness it.
that's a terrifying thought. It is.
That's a great story, though. I'm right.
Yeah.
Writing it down. I said it first. Yeah, man. So the future definitely inspires me. The idea of who we are as a species does too. And then, man, I cannot write enough about death, like what happens after the fact. This is very interesting to me. Who wrote I, Vampire? Do you know who I'm talking
I
about?
fam No,
What
no.
Dreams May Come, that movie with Robin Williams. He wrote that's based on a book too.
Yeah, yeah.
Richardson. Uh,
I can't
no,
remember the name of the author though.
is it Richardson? Matheson.
Oh,
Richard
Richard
Matheson.
Matheson. Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah, that book.
Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah. I've read a lot of his stuff.
Oh yeah, he's great. What Dreams May Come. His
Yeah.
book is amazing. I mean, it's basically a doctor. I think it's a doctor who dies, or no, an author that dies, and he goes to heaven or Summerland, as he calls it. Like, that's really awesome to think about who we are and what we're capable of, what consciousness is. You know, the definition of that doesn't even exist, really.
Yeah, nobody really knows.
Yeah, I mean,
So,
they can pinpoint like the synapses or the neurons, but I don't know. Like, I could tell you where my heart is, and I could feel it bouncing in my chest. Or, I can tell where my brain is kind of in a way if you get a headache or whatnot, but I can't tell you where my consciousness is coming from. Some people
yeah,
say like your belly or something, but
it's a strange thought because you don't even know what it is, and really everything that you're seeing and feeling is just an interpretation anyway to begin
it's
with.
not even
So,
that, but you're time traveling, right? You
yeah.
yourself are like a few seconds into the future, but your thoughts are a few seconds behind.
Yeah, that's an interesting concept. I've never thought about it that way.
Yeah, you're constantly trying to catch up to yourself. Somebody
Wow,
said,
that's
somebody mentioned that death is material too, which I find incredibly interesting, that you'll never actually experience your death. By the time
hmm,
you're dead, your mind won't even have caught up to the fact that you're dead. So you will never ever experience your own death. People around you
hmm.
will, but you will be dead, and whatever happens after that, you'll know at that point, but your physical body will not actually, your mind or your consciousness won't actually experience your own death.
That's an interesting thought, and it's frightening too because, well, what do they say? The brain is still alive for so however long after your body dies.
I don't know.
Also, so like,
Your brain
what
stem
could
is the
be?
last to die or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, like what, are you just stuck in some kind of like dream or something? Like, do you know you're dead? Like,
I don't know. I mean, it's fascinating to think that when you do die, your brain or whatever releases some kind of chemical, and you get to relax into this idea of an afterlife. I don't know. Right? It's so interesting that me and you can sit at a computer and we can imagine something, and we can type out the letters and words and sentences and paragraphs to make that come alive for somebody to read. Why wouldn't, when we die, wouldn't our brain be able to just make our entire lives and whatever we have in our imaginations come alive for us as well? It's and dreams, what they last seconds, but you can do so much within the dream itself. So who
yeah,
knows?
that's the whole your life flashes before your eyes thing.
Yeah, life reviews and things like that. Incredibly interesting
Yeah,
stuff. And aliens, I mean, I don't know. Do you think there's aliens?
I don't
You think
know.
they
I
visited?
mean, I I don't know if they visited. I can't say one way or the other, but I love astronomy and space exploration. So I figure there's got to be something else out there somewhere, whether it's visit
Yeah, I
us
think
or
so too.
not.
I don't know if they can visit us. I don't think we can visit them.
Yeah, it's so far. The distances are unimaginable, and you know, it's There's a quote by Arthur C. Clarke that I love. It goes, "Two possibilities exist. Either we are alone in the universe or we are not. Both are equally terrifying."
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how terrifying it would be if we found another sentient species out there, unless they turned out to be, you know, Donald Trump supporters or something. What do they say? What is it? The Fermi paradox says that, I mean, if there is, civilization isn't forever anyway. It eventually dies out, and we can never develop technology fast enough to travel the distances necessary to go and find a hospitable planet. So it's really fascinating. They say the same thing about economics too. Like something gets big enough, it'll eventually die and break up into smaller parts. So
Yeah, yeah, and from the past, that's what's happened to any large civilization. It's eventually broken down.
yeah,
I mean,
always, right?
look, the
We've never,
Roman Empire was. I mean, look at that.
yeah. I mean, as a species, we've only had civilization for what, 10,000 years potentially?
Yeah, at most.
Maybe you can argue a little bit longer, maybe you can argue a little bit shorter, but I mean, we haven't been
It's
around that
just
long, putting
no, not at
buildings up
all.
and making people dig for wheat or whatever it is. But, hunting and small family groups, maybe what, a couple 100,000 years or something along those lines?
Yeah.
I don't know. Where's our future? Is it in the stars? Do you know who Scott Kelly is?
No.
He's an astronaut. He's the guy who lived on the International Space Station for
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah.
almost a year or something. When he got back, he was basically like, it sounded like he was almost dead. I
I
think
can't
his eyeballs
imagine.
hurt.
I can't imagine being up there for a year. I mean, just the small
Uh,
spaces and I mean, whoa.
I mean, imagine it's going to take 6 months to get to Mars, right? By the time you get there, you're useless. You can't do anything. You've gotten to Mars. You can't work on the gravity without like relaxing into it. Basically, everybody else around you is suffering from the same thing. I mean, it just seems like the universe is set up so that we cannot go farther than our own little area. Even the moon, we went there. We don't have anything up there. There's just no point to it.
Yeah. Yeah,
I
and
don't
then
know.
you have like the Mars One project that plans on colonizing Mars, within the next 20 years. That's their idea anyway, is to start sending people up there on one-way trips and, just keep doing it until eventually it builds to something. And I think there's a
There's a
list
book.
of 175,000 people on a waiting list to go.
Yeah, I know. There's a lot of people that will. That's the fact that that's one of the novels that I'm working on right now is the idea of colonizing Mars. I've trying to do it as uniquely as possible. But I'd love the idea of doing something like that. There was a book written in like the mid 90s about everything that you would need. I mean, the idea of doing it has existed for, at least 2 decades at this point in time,
Yeah.
because it's deadly. It's dangerous.
Yeah, they say the first, at least the first group that goes is not going to survive, to set
And who wants
everything
to be
up
part of that
for the
first
next
group?
people.
I mean, who do you get to
Oh,
volunteer to
there's
be that death group? All right, George, you're going to
there's
Mars
lots
to
of them.
die tomorrow. Yeah, I guess, right? They think they're going to be
There's
famous.
a lot of people would do it. There's a long list.
Would you do it if they said, Lee, we got a spot on this next rocket ship? It's going to Mars. Do you want it? Would you do it?
I would probably not do it. I'm afraid of airplanes. So this
Really?
rocket would, yeah, I don't know. It'd be enticing
Tolerable.
theoretically.
I'm intolerable to be around in tiny circles. I mean, you can ask my wife. I'm intolerable in our home. I can imagine me on like a rocket ship surrounded by other people for like 6 months and I can't leave. I would be that guy
Yeah.
with space sickness. Oh, where'd everybody else go? I don't know. I threw them out. I murdered them all. I hate them. I don't know. And it's interesting, right? I mean, there are so many possibilities. And we're so new. It's like any of this has happened before. We can't go back in time and say humans have been in this place before. Everything is brand new.
Nope, I'm still here.
What were we talking about? Paranormal stuff, ghosts. That's another thing, huh? Do you write about ghosts
I have
in your
not written about
nonfiction?
ghosts yet. Not yet.
A lot of people believe in that stuff too. I guess that's a form of afterlife as well.
Yeah, it's an interesting concept to theorize what the possibilities of any of that could be. I've never personally seen a ghost, but
I'm a complete skeptic. I mean, I don't believe anything other than what
yeah,
happens that to me on an individual basis. I mean, scientists can tell me that there's string theory. I'm never going to understand it. So, okay, I'll shrug and say, oh, if you say so. Gravity works because I
yeah.
can't fly. I mean, I know aerodynamics works because I've been in a plane, but I'm never going to tell you how it works.
The
Just I
interesting
assume it
thing about
does.
gravity is we don't even really know what it is.
It's still
It's
theory, right? It's not
yeah,
the
it's still
laws
a
of
theory.
gravity.
They've never discovered a physical substance that could be called gravity, or
No,
it's
it's
not like a
inertia, though,
magnetic
isn't it?
force.
Isn't it
Yeah,
the
that's the
physics
idea.
and yeah.
Yeah, it
I
has to
mean,
do
it
with
makes
like this
sense.
fabric of space-time, like
It's very interesting because you could have somebody incredibly intelligent that can stand there and tell you how gravity works, but they probably wouldn't be able to cook you an omelet. Or I could probably cook you an omelet, but I'm not going to be able to tell you anything about other things. It's like, who knows everything? Nobody. We just have to trust each other. And then, we'll bump into Jeffrey Dahmer or something, and he knows a lot about hurting people. I don't know. It's an
everybody has
interesting
their
situation.
specialty, I guess.
Yeah, and I guess that's what they say ghosts are too, is like echoes of people in the past.
Yeah, and I've also heard theories because there's a theory of the multiverse with multiple versions of the same world where things are a little different.
Yeah, I
And
love that.
one of the ideas behind that is when you see a ghost, you're seeing like an image that like somehow crossed over from a parallel dimension. So you're seeing a person just not in our own reality, kind of a thing.
My buddy, when I was growing up, I don't know, he had some ghost stories. He said he witnessed stuff, drumsticks flying across the room, horrible eerie sounds coming through the speaker of his family house. His sister's room, there'd be crucifixes turned upside down, really odd stuff. And of course, he would tell me this stuff at night at his home, and it would freak me out. And I was a kid, so probably none of it was true. But I mean, interaction with physical things, I've heard that a lot.
Yeah, like
I don't,
poltergeist and stuff
yeah,
like that.
I don't know if you could blame that on the multiverse necessarily, because that's interacting with your plane of existence.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's interesting to think about because then, what is that caused by?
I mean, what is a poltergeist? The spirit of a person that was alive? I don't know. I don't write ghost stories. I think I would love to
Yeah,
write more
I've
horror.
never written one. Yeah.
I mean, I would like to write monster stories too. I found a publication called Cicada, Cicada. I guess it's a middle grade publication, and they're constantly looking for monster stories, like
Hmm.
fun-loving monster stories or something. And I sat there for a minute today and I thought about it. The hell is a fun-loving monster? Is it like the
Yeah.
monster movie or something along those lines? I'm not even sure.
I don't know. It makes me think of that movie Little Monsters from the 80s with the blue
That's another
guy.
example, right? The monster's a good guy, or like Shrek or something like that.
Yeah. All my monsters that I write about are horrible. You wouldn't
Do
want to
you
encounter
find
one.
do you find yourself duplicating the same monster, or do you think there's originality every single one of your stories?
Some of them are duplicates, but they're not obvious. I think I have 3 stories with the same creature, except it's not pointed out that it's the same creature. Like you wouldn't guess it.
Would you want to kind of like make a trilogy of stories about a particular creature?
I thought about doing that with some of them. I've thought about putting it together a collection where all the different monsters are somehow connected.
Well, how do you feel about collections? Do you think all of the stories in a collection should have been published at one point or another? Have gone through kind of the journey in the magazine world or the e-zine world? Or can you just collect your stuff and say, here's a collection, guys, enjoy?
Yeah, I think it could be either way. You know, it's probably like an author's preference. I mean, when I thought about putting together a monster collection, and most of it was going to be pre-published stuff, and I thought I'd write a few original pieces that would only be in the collection as well to kind of go with it.
Mhm.
So I figured like a mixture of the two would be a good formula.
Just recently started to mess with speculative fiction, maybe about a year ago. Before that, it was more literary stuff. But I could definitely now see a collection of stuff that has a general theme running through it. As before, I tried to do a collection and it made no sense whatsoever. It was all over the place.
Yeah, definitely like most collections, they all have a theme. Siren's Call actually did a monster collection called Monster Brawl. That was good.
So, yeah, man, this has been a great conversation. So many places you can go in terms of inspiration. What else is on your list?
Let's see. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. I think, yeah.
Man,
I
that's
put
it's
together
been
a
wonderful
short
talking to
list just in case I got stuck, but
you. Well, I try to make sure there's no dead air. I'm constantly trying to move the conversation along. I think that's why it tends to kind of ramble all over the place. Is I'm not really thinking. I'm
yeah,
just kind of jumping in there, going, "Okay, can't let this sit
you,
still too
you
long."
don't want those awkward silence.
Yeah, definitely not. So I kind of finish every podcast with three questions, and the first one being, you're a pretty experienced writer, got a lot of stuff out there. You work hard. You're an editor. You're in the field. You've been there for a long time. What would you say to somebody trying to break in, try to do what you're doing? What would be your first line of advice for somebody like that?
Read as many books and short stories as you possibly can
I think that's the
in the
best
genre that you
advice.
want to write.
I think you have
Yeah,
to read all over the
just
place. Don't read
read
just
everything.
everything.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
read like 50 books a year
Okay.
at least.
I read a lot of
And when
Reddit,
I first
unfortunately.
uh, yeah, when I first started writing, the first thing I did was go to the library and take out a whole bunch of books and just read everything.
What is your favorite
Because you,
on writing book?
I've actually only read one, which was Stephen King's On Writing.
I think that's the only one that
Um,
matters.
no, I've got some others. I can't remember what they were. That I want to read. So it's hard to pick a favorite because I've only read the one, but it was good. I enjoyed it. It was like half autobiographical,
Yeah.
so it was an interesting read. Um,
I think all the big ones have had at one point one of those, what do you call it? Tutorials on how to write, your Orson Scott Cards. I mean, Brandon Sanderson, the guy that I mentioned earlier, you could find him online all over the place. He's got videos on YouTube. Teaches a class at Brigham Young. That's interesting. So number two is, what are you reading right now? What do you have open? What's on your nightstand? What would you recommend that people pick up and start?
right now, I've got a huge reading list that I'll never finish, but
Me too.
uh, next on my right now I'm reading a book called Pretty Mary's All in a Row by Gwendolyn Keist. It's her debut novella. She's a writer. I know she's in kind of my writer circle. And then next up on my list is The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy by Douglas Adams, because I've been wanting to read that forever, and I had trouble tracking down all the individual books. So for Christmas, I got like the whole collection in one book. So I'm gonna plow through that one next.
I'm very jealous
Um,
that you get to read that for the first time. That is probably one of my favorite books ever.
I'm looking very forward to
Yeah.
it.
Oh, good. Yeah, that's a fantastic book. What else you got?
Uh, if I what I've read recently, if I had to recommend a book, it would be House of Leaves by Mark Z. Danielewski.
Hmm.
Interesting book.
Okay. And my last question's easy. Where can we find you on the World Wide Web?
You can find me at www.leeformanauthor.com. That's my website. My blog's on there. You can find me on penofthedamned.com. I'm on Facebook, uh, Twitter at Lee Andrew Forman, and I'm also on Instagram.
Oh, what do you do on Instagram?
Just pretty much the same stuff I post on Facebook. It's just cross-posted. So
Oh, I got you. Okay, I thought they only took
yeah,
photos on Instagram. I don't use it at all, or maybe I do, and I'm not even aware of it.
yeah, I'm pretty new to it actually. I've only started using it the last couple of months. But I was like, yeah, I try to get on as many social platforms as I can and just post everywhere.
Right? I mean, I guess that's the best way you can do it. Facebook's king right now, I guess.
It kind of is, because it's hard to post writing and stuff on Instagram because you can't post direct links to click on, so it's not the best platform. But doing it right now, Twitter I like, but I feel like it's a little limiting with the character limit, and I think that's why Facebook is best for writers because you could just limit to how much you can put in the post. So I use that primarily.
Thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate it.
Yeah,
And
thanks for having
maybe,
me.
yeah, man, thanks for saying yes. And maybe we can get you back on, talk about some more stuff, and maybe even do a mirage, talk about a speculative author of your choosing.
Sure. Sounds good.
I'll shoot you an email. We'll discuss it. Otherwise, man, you have a great night, and thanks again.
All right. You too. Enjoyed it.